7 seconds. Supposed life expectancy of an M60 machine gunner in a firefight. Although this dramatic statistic was more a case of correct data leading to the wrong conclusion, it surely wasn't a pleasant thing to hear when handed your new weapon. Not enough time to regret your life choices before enemies zeroed in on the distinctive sound that gave away your position. Yet thousands of Americans picked up this 23-pound pig anyway and marched into the jungle, drawing the short straw in the military lottery. This is the dark history of America's most infamous machine gun, and of course people behind it. And in front. Let's begin. After World War II, American military looked at captured German weapons with both envy and admiration and wanted something like that for themselves. Compared to US soldiers with the heavy BAR and its short 20-round magazines, or even heavier M1919 with tripod and canvas belt to trip you over, German infantry squads were immensely more effective with their MG34 and 42s as first-ever general-purpose machine guns. That's not just due to double the firing rate they had that's turning humans into Swiss cheese, but the whole tactic and accessories built around the weapon. American squads used machine guns usually as support, while German squads revolved around the 3-man machine gun corps that provided heavy firepower while riflemen protected them. After seeing the effectiveness of this approach, the US military decided they needed their own general-purpose machine gun to serve also as squad's main source of firepower. So, US engineers, let's say, borrowed some of proven German ingenious technology. They combined the feeding system of the MG42 with ergonomic elements from the FG42 paratroop rifle, added some American sprinkles, and after a couple years of development, the M60 was born in 1957, just in time to get a reality check in the jungles of Vietnam. Spoiler alert, it didn't go very well. Vietnam gained the M60 its everlasting fame, but also exposed both the strengths and fatal weaknesses. The powerful 7.62x51 NATO round could punch through dense jungle foliage and people behind it, where the 5.56 rounds from M16 rifles struggled. But that power came with a heavy price, literally heavy. At 23 pounds unloaded, it was actually one of the lightest machine guns of that caliber at the time, but soldiers quickly nicknamed it the Pig. The M60 was poorly balanced and awkward to carry for longer periods through thick terrain like in, I don't know, jungle. The ammo was significantly heavier than for M16s, and although rate of fire of 600 rounds per minute doesn't sound much, it means 100-round belt is gone in 10 seconds, and that belt weighs around 7 pounds. The 3-man team operating the M60 would usually haul between 2,000 and 4,000 rounds, sometimes even more, so you do the math and distribute that on 3 people along their standard gear. On patrols, everyone would carry at least one belt of ammo for the M60, as your machine gun going silent in the middle of firefight was a bigger issue than additional weight you'd have to carry. No one really complained about carrying too much ammo once the shooting started. Not to mention that firefights could last for hours, so you'd have to be disciplined with your index finger. Every 5th round was a tracer, helping the gunner see where he's shooting, but also giving away their position more clearly to the enemy, if they don't already know where you are. M60 was manned by a 3-man team, the gunner carrying the weapon with at least 100-round belt as a ready ammo, the assistant gunner with an extra barrel, optionally tripod and additional ammunition, and the ammo bearer, also called the mule for obvious reasons, had the least fun but the most important job. You've seen photos of soldiers carrying those belts in cool-looking Pancho Villa style like Rambo. Well, turns out that those were usually inexperienced units that hadn't faced jams in the middle of a firefight because links were bent or caught twigs and mud. It looked great for letters home, but veterans knew that exposed ammunition collected dirt and debris that caused catastrophic jams in firefights, which they also probably learned the hard way. They carried their ammo in claymore bags or other custom-made containers. Some soldiers got creative by linking a couple of belts together and loading them into rucksacks or modified old radio backpacks. They then fed the gun through an improvised flexible feed chute, allowing them to have a couple hundred rounds ready without needing to reload. Flaws. Running out of ammo or dealing with its weight was the least of the M60's problems. Reliability, however, was a different story, and that was of course promptly found out while under fire. The gun had a special talent for jamming at the worst possible moment, especially when dirty, which in Vietnam was essentially all the time. Vietnam's climate was hard on all military equipment, and the M60 was no exception. The operating rods and bolt groups were not made from high-quality materials and were prone to breaking. Spent casings would fail to extract, staying stuck inside the chamber, forcing a barrel change before firing could continue. Some versions liked to tear the rims off fired cartridge cases during extraction, so the crew had to ram a cleaning rod down the barrel to extract the torn cartridge, again probably at the wrong moment. The sear in the trigger mechanism wore down over time, potentially causing the gun to run away, a malfunction where the weapon would continue firing uncontrollably after the trigger was released. The gunner would have to wrestle with the weapon either until it ran out of ammo or the assistant yanked on the belt to stop it from feeding the gun. In the chaos of combat, this wasted precious ammunition at best, or at worst, caused damage to the gun or even led to friendly fire incidents. After a couple hundred rounds of sustained firing, the barrel would need to be changed. The assistant gunner had to directly grab the scorching hot barrel with an asbestos glove or a spare cloth, as the M60 didn't have a quick change latch like the MG42, which let you swap barrels without touching them. Now try doing that under fire without horribly burning yourself or your gunner. And yes, it did happen, if you're wondering. In formal army testing during the 70s, the M60's reliability was shockingly poor. It couldn't even fire 1,000 rounds without a stoppage, or 2,000 rounds without a complete failure. When the M60's manufacturer protested these testings, they were reminded that they recommended replacing the entire bolt assembly every 15 to 20,000 rounds, essentially admitting their weapon was fundamentally flawed. And of course, in combat conditions and heavy environments, this was just amplified. The barrel latch mechanism could catch on something and accidentally unlatch the barrel so it could fall out. Newer M60s replaced this with a push-button mechanism that was less likely to release by accident. The grip and trigger housing assembly was held in place with a fragile leaf spring clip instead of proper captive pins. This weakness had also been known since the first trials, yet somehow made the journey from obvious problem to standard issue without anyone fixing it. Resourceful soldiers reinforced their M60s with duct tape and cable ties to prevent this. Despite its reliability issues, it was remarkably accurate and effective when it worked properly, and soldiers had some sort of love-hate relationship with it. Gunners developed maintenance and cleaning rituals to prevent failures, or practicing disassembling and reassembling their weapons blindfolded so they could be more effective if, or better say, when, jam happens in combat. Due to its distinctive sound when firing, gunners had to frequently change positions to stay alive. If they were in a fixed position, like defending a base from being overrun, they were basically firing until they got hit, at which point the assistant gunner took over. Viet Cong and NVA forces would target machine gunners first in any engagement as they were well aware of their firepower. So the M60 gunners were on the top priority list and subsequently had one of the highest casualty rates, sharing top places with radio operators, point men, and other juicy or unfortunate jobs. And if you think that carrying an M60 through the jungle is a high-risk position, think again. The M60 found itself mounted on nearly every platform imaginable: vehicles, boats, and of course helicopters, either gunships or as personal protection for medevacs. M60s here were manned by door gunners who had anything but a fun and safe job. Okay, maybe sometimes a little bit fun, but definitely not safe. Around half of the helicopters deployed in Vietnam were shot down, adding to the already high risk of gunners being hit by enemy fire during hot landings. They sat completely exposed on the helicopter's open sides, with their own fire providing only a limited form of protection. They had to learn to lead targets and compensate for aiming based on the helicopter's movement, all while identifying enemy positions in the jungle while moving at high speed through the air. Here, the M60 got a controversial reputation for firing at civilians, which sadly did happen for many reasons, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes not. The M60 was modified in many versions for many roles, even by soldiers in the field with their own unauthorized modifications that no weapons manual would approve. Long-range reconnaissance patrols sometimes sawed off the barrel and stock on the M60 to reduce weight and size, and used it without sights. However, this could help if they were compromised deep in enemy territory. Firing continuously with a shorter barrel made the gun louder with a bright muzzle flash and could confuse the enemy, making them think that there was a much larger force than just a couple of members in a recon team. Through films like Rambo, Platoon, and Full Metal Jacket, the distinctive profile of a soldier with an M60 and crisscross ammo belts brought the machine gun its fame, even symbolizing the Vietnam War itself.